My brother Rob thought I was helpless after my stroke. He thought forging my signature to sell our family farm would be easy money, but he was trying to steal land from a man who'd been farming for 40 years. Rob was about to learn that some battles are over before they even begin. My name is William Harper, but everyone calls me Bill. This is the story of how my brother tried to steal our four-generation family farm and how it cost him $8.4 million. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. You'll want to hear every word of this family betrayal story. I grew up in Cedar Falls, Iowa in the 1960s, surrounded by those endless farm fields that stretched to the horizon. The Harper Family Farm wasn't just a business. It was our identity. 480 acres of prime agricultural land, purchased by my great-grandfather Thomas Harper in 1903, expanded and protected by every generation since. "This land is in your blood, William," my father Frank used to tell me when I was just 10 years old. "We've fought for every acre. We've earned every acre with sweat and determination." Rob grew up on the same land beside me, but he never felt that same love. He was 5 years younger, but he always had bigger dreams. City life, office jobs, plans to make, quote, real money. "Farming is the past, Bill," he'd say during our senior year of high school. "Real money is in real estate development. People want modern living, not working in muddy boots." When our father died in 1980, he left the farm to me in his will. Full ownership to me, and enough money for Rob to buy a house in the city. It seemed like a fair division at the time. Rob moved to Des Moines, got into real estate, and his visits became less and less frequent. "What are you still doing on that farm?" he'd ask during his rare visits. "There are so many more profitable things you could do with all that land." But I didn't know anything except farming. Corn, soybeans, some livestock. A simple life, but a satisfying one. I married my wife Sarah in 1982, and we built a beautiful life on the farm. Rob's visits over the years only happened in two situations: when he was having money troubles or when he wanted to present real estate opportunities. "Bill, we could turn this land into a recreation area," he said in 1995. "Golf course, residential development. We'd make millions." "This land is for farming, Rob. It's not for sale. Be pragmatic. Farming is dying. Don't miss this opportunity." But I wasn't missing anything. Farming wasn't dying. It was evolving. Modern equipment, sustainable methods, direct marketing. Harper Farm grew every year because I loved the land and respected it. When Sarah died of cancer in 2010, Rob showed up at the funeral. For the first time in years, he actually seemed genuinely concerned. "Bill, you're going to be alone out here. Move to the city. Take this burden off your shoulders." "This isn't a burden, Rob. This is my home." Rob's real estate business went up and down over the years. He took a big hit in the 2008 crisis, but he always managed to get back on his feet. I learned much later that he had a gambling problem. Las Vegas, online poker, horse racing. Even at Sarah's funeral, his phone kept buzzing with betting updates. In early 2023, I had a mild stroke. Weakness on my left side, slight speech impairment. The doctor said recovery was possible, but I would need time. Rob seemed very concerned during those days. "Bill, I want to help you," Rob said on the third day of his hospital visit. "Farm business, paperwork, banking. I can handle everything until you get better." For the first time in years, I felt like my brother actually cared about me. A stroke makes you feel fragile, makes you feel lonely. It seemed natural for the only family member to offer support. "Thanks, Rob. I really do need the help." "No problem. What's family for? Could you sign a power of attorney document so I can handle the paperwork at the bank? That way I can pay bills, keep track of farm business." I signed a limited power of attorney for emergency bills and banking transactions. It had clear and specific boundaries. Daily operational expenses, electricity, water, fuel, things like that. Major expenditures or property transactions were definitely not included. "This is just for routine stuff," I said as I signed the document. "You'll call me for important decisions." "Of course, Bill. You focus on getting better." For the next 4 months, Rob managed the farm operations. I focused on physical therapy, speech rehabilitation, getting my strength back. Rob gave regular reports. "Crops are good, bills are paid, everything's going smoothly." "The farm is running great, Bill," he'd say during our phone conversations. "Maybe this system should continue. You stay stress-free, I handle the business." But things started feeling wrong. Neighbors were asking strange questions. "Bill, are you really going to sell the farm?" my neighbor Eddie Morrison asked in May. "Sell what? Who said what?" Rob was asking questions about farm valuation, land value, development potential, stuff like that. Something tightened in my chest. I'll talk to Rob. But getting in touch with Rob was becoming increasingly difficult. He was slow to return phone calls. His visits to the farm were decreasing. The excuse was always the same. Real estate business is busy. Big projects. In July, physical therapy was completed. My walking returned to normal. My speech improved. My strength came back. The doctor said I was fully recovered and could return to normal life. "I can't wait to tell Rob," I said to my wife Sarah's photograph. "I can manage the farm myself now." But when I called Rob, he hung up. He didn't return my messages. He stopped coming to the farm. The first week of August, I got a strange call from Cedar Falls Bank. "Mr. Harper, we'd like to discuss the property sale transaction, some of the recent signatures." "What property sale?" "The Harper Family Farm sale. It was completed in July." The phone fell from my hand. I drove to the bank like a madman. A 63-year-old man with shaking hands and a pounding heart. Bank manager Janet Williams received me with a worried expression on her face. "Mr. Harper, it looks like there's some confusion." "What confusion? Who sold my farm?" Janet opened the file, documents scattered across the table. "Robert Harper, under your power of attorney. He sold the property valued at $2.8 million to Sunrise Development Corporation for $800,000. $800,000? For land worth $2.8 million. "Here's your signature," Janet said, pointing to the document. I looked at the signature. It really did look like my signature, but it wasn't. The slant of the letters, the way it was punctuated. It was very similar, but it wasn't mine. "I didn't sign this." "Mr. Harper, your power of attorney gives Robert Harper authority for property transactions." "No, I only gave him authority for operational expenses. Property sales weren't included." Janet pulled out the original power of attorney document. Rob had altered it. Instead of limited authority, it said full authority, including all property transactions. It wasn't my signature. Rob had altered the power of attorney and forged the property sale document too. "We need to do signature analysis," I said. "Mr. Harper, this is a serious accusation. Are you sure?" "My brother stole the farm that's been in our family for 4 generations. Of course I'm sure." When I left the bank, I went straight to lawyer Marcus Webb's office. Marcus was an expert in agricultural law. He'd been defending farmers' rights for 30 years. "Bill, this is very serious," he said after examining the documents. "Signature forgery, fraud, altering power of attorney documents. Put it all together, those are major federal crimes. Can I get my farm back?" The buyer, Sunrise Development, may claim they're a good faith purchaser. But if fraud is proven, the sale becomes void. Also, we can demand triple damages from Rob. What does triple damages mean? Under Iowa law, in property fraud cases, the injured party can demand 3 times the actual damage. You suffered $2.8 million in damages, you can demand $8.4 million. Rob's phone was still off. When I went to his house, it was empty. Neighbors said he'd left town for a business trip. But I knew I had to find Rob. I hired private detective Jim Reynolds, former cop expert tracker. "Find Rob Harper," I said, "wherever he is." 2 days later, Jim had an answer. "Las Vegas, playing in a poker tournament at Caesar's Palace Casino. And he's playing big." "How big?" $50,000 buy-in tournaments. "Lost $200,000 last night." He'd sold the farm for $800,000 and was spending it gambling. He was burning up family heritage at poker tables. "Also, something else," Jim said. "Sunrise Development Corporation. Rob's a partner. He owns 30% of the company. He'd sold it to his own company. He'd stolen the farm first, then sold it cheap to his own company, planning to sell it expensive to developers." I gave Marcus this new information. "This makes the case more complex," he said. "Rob didn't just steal, he ran an organized fraud. We filed a complaint with the FBI. Fraud, forgery, power of attorney abuse. Federal crimes because it crossed state lines. Agent Sarah Kim called us 3 days later. "Mr. Harper, we've arrested Rob Harper. He was caught at the casino in Las Vegas. Did he confess?" "Not yet, but our evidence is strong. Signature analysis is complete. It's definitely forgery." Rob's arrest was big news in Cedar Falls. The local newspaper made it front page. Real estate developer accused of stealing brother's farm. The community turned against Rob. We farmers look out for each other. Stealing land is one of the biggest sins. But the war wasn't over yet. Rob's lawyer was David Silverstein, an expensive criminal lawyer from Chicago. At the first hearing, he used a surprising defense strategy. "William Harper wants to bankrupt his brother," Silverstein said. Rob Harper was trying in good faith to protect the family farm. When William's health deteriorated, the sale became necessary. "Lies!" I shouted in the courtroom. The judge banged his gavel. "Order!" Marcus leaned over to me. "Stay calm. We have the evidence." Handwriting expert Dr. Elizabeth Chen testified. Comparing the signature samples I have from Rob Harper with the documents in question, I can say with 99.8% certainty that they are forgeries. How can you be so sure? Silverstein asked. In signature analysis, we examined 47 different points: pressure, speed, angle, movement flow. Rob Harper managed to forge 43 of these points, but 4 of them give him away. The bank records were also clear. Rob had altered the power of attorney document and had it notarized with a false document. Who notarized this document? Marcus asked. Sandra Martinez. In Las Vegas, FBI agent Kim said, "Our investigation revealed that Sandra Martinez notarized the false document for $500. We also presented Rob's casino chips. In the 6 weeks after the farm sale, he'd gambled $650,000. You spent the family heritage at gambling tables," Marcus said to Rob. Rob didn't answer. Our strongest witness was neighbor Eddie Morrison. Rob had told me months before how he was going to sell the farm. He said Bill's illness is an opportunity. "Objection!" Silverstein shouted. "Overruled," the judge said. "The witness may continue." Rob said, "If William gets better, it'll ruin the plan." He said, "I have to act fast." The courtroom was silent. It was clear that Rob's plan had been prepared in advance. Even in his final defense, Silverstein wasn't convincing. He tried to characterize it as a, quote, family dispute, but our evidence was too strong. The judge gave his decision 2 weeks later. Rob Harper is found guilty, Judge Patricia Rodriguez said, of signature forgery, fraud, and false document preparation. I breathed a sigh of relief in the courtroom. For the first time in 8 months, I felt genuinely relaxed. In the sentencing phase, the judge continued, I'm giving Rob Harper a 7-year federal prison sentence. But the really satisfying part was the civil case. With Marcus's skill, we won the triple damages lawsuit. Under Iowa law, the judge said, in property fraud cases, the injured party is entitled to triple the actual damages. William Harper's damage was $2.8 million. Triple damages is $8.4 million. Rob's face went white. His lawyer whispered something in his ear. Furthermore, the judge said, ownership of Harper Family Farm will be immediately returned to William Harper. The sale to Sunrise Development Corporation is void. My farm was back, but there was more. Rob's real estate portfolio, his bank assets, even his Las Vegas apartment were seized to pay the damages. He lost everything to cover the $8.4 million. Bill, please, Rob said after court. I'm your brother. We're family. You left the family, I said, the day you stole my family's land. When I returned to the farm, it was heartbreaking to see what Rob had damaged. Some equipment had been sold. Some of the vehicles in the barn were missing. Even Sarah's roses in the garden had been neglected. But the land was still there. Harper land. Ours for 4 generations, and it would stay ours for the 5th. With the compensation money, I modernized the farm. New tractors, smart irrigation systems, sustainable farming technologies. Harper Farm became one of Iowa's most advanced farms. Eddie's son Mike, an agricultural college graduate, started working on the farm. Mr. Harper, this farm is the future of the region, Mike said. Modern technology with traditional values. Rob served 7 years in prison. When he got out, he didn't return to Iowa. Last I heard, he was working at a small real estate office in Florida. The compensation debt is still ongoing. It's being deducted from his salary. He never apologized. He never showed genuine remorse. He was just sorry he got caught. The Cedar Falls community learned from the incident. New programs were started to protect elderly farmers. Educational seminars against fraud. A local regulation known as the Harper Act that provides extra protection for family members in property transactions. I'm 65 years old now, and Harper Family Farm is stronger than ever. $3.2 million annual production value. 12 full-time employees, one of Iowa's leaders in sustainable agriculture. Mike Morrison will be the farm's future partner. He won't be a brother, but the family legacy will continue. Mike loves the land, understands the values, and is ready to carry on the Harper tradition. Mr. Harper, Mike said last month, protecting this land is an honor. What Rob Harper did will never be forgotten. It shouldn't be forgotten, I said, but not for revenge, as a lesson for future generations. Rob's story became legend in Cedar Falls. It's known as the quote-quote incident. Farmers tell their children about it. The consequences of betraying trust, of turning family bonds into betrayal. I put up a new sign at the main entrance to the farm. Harper Family Farm. 4 generations since 1903. Rob's name isn't on it. It never will be. Lawyer Marcus had asked, "Will you forgive Rob?" Forgiveness is a personal matter, I'd said, but trust is different. Rob broke my trust, stole my land, tarnished our family honor. Forgiveness is a luxury, trust is a necessity. The Harper case had consequences far beyond our family. Within 6 months of Rob's conviction, Iowa passed new legislation strengthening protections for elderly property owners. The Harper Protection Act required additional safeguards for power of attorney documents and mandatory cooling-off periods for large property transactions involving seniors. Your case saved hundreds of other families, Agent Sarah Kim told me during a follow-up visit. We've seen a dramatic decrease in similar fraud cases since the publicity around your brother's conviction. But success brought its own challenges. The farm's notoriety attracted unwanted attention. Real estate developers started calling, offering millions for the land. Some claimed they could develop it properly, unlike Rob's failed scheme. "Mr. Harper, we could offer you $15 million for the entire property," said one persistent developer from Chicago. "Think about what you could do with that money." "I could lose my identity," I replied. "No, thank you." The media attention was both blessing and curse. Agricultural magazines wanted to feature our sustainable farming methods. Television producers wanted to tell our story. But I was careful about which opportunities to accept. "We want to show how traditional farming families fight back," said a documentary filmmaker. "Your story represents American values." I agreed to participate, but only if the focus remained on farming techniques and land conservation, not just the family drama. Mike Morrison proved to be more than just a farmhand. His agricultural engineering degree and fresh perspective helped us implement precision farming techniques that increased our yield by 35% while reducing environmental impact. "Mr. Harper, we could patent some of these irrigation systems," Mike suggested, "license the technology to other farms." It was an idea Rob would have loved, turning innovation into profit, but I was more interested in sharing knowledge than selling it. "Let's publish our methods instead," I said. "Help other farmers succeed without paying licensing fees." The decision reflected everything Rob had never understood about farming values: community over profit, sustainability over quick money, legacy over immediate gain. 3 years after Rob's conviction, I received an unexpected visitor. Sandra Martinez, the Las Vegas notary who had authenticated Rob's forged documents, appeared at my farm gate on a Tuesday morning. "Mr. Harper, I need to speak with you," she said, her voice heavy with shame, "about what I did to your family." I invited her into the farmhouse kitchen, the same room where my father had taught me about land ownership, where Sarah and I had planned our future, where I'd made the decision to fight Rob's theft. "I was desperate," Sandra began, tears streaming down her face. "2 kids, no husband, about to lose my house, when that man offered me $500 to notarize a document without proper ID verification. I thought it was harmless." "You helped steal 4 generations of family heritage," I said, not unkindly, but clearly. "I know I've lived with that guilt every day since I testified. I came to apologize and to tell you something else." Sandra pulled out a manila envelope. "Rob contacted me 2 months ago. He's been released early for good behavior. He wanted me to testify that you coerced my original testimony." My blood chilled. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to go to hell." "But Mr. Harper, he's planning something." He mentioned, quote, new evidence and, quote, getting his inheritance back. I thanked Sandra for her honesty and immediately called Marcus Webb. After 4 years, I thought the Harper family war was over. Apparently, Rob had other ideas. "Bill, his conviction stands regardless," Marcus assured me, "but we should be prepared for whatever scheme he's cooking up." We didn't have to wait long. The next week, I received a certified letter from Harper Legal Recovery Services, a law firm I'd never heard of, claiming to represent Robert Harper's legitimate inheritance claims. The letter alleged that I had manipulated a mentally impaired Rob into confessing to crimes he didn't commit. It claimed new evidence would prove that the original power of attorney was legitimate and that my signature analysis had been falsified. "It's desperation," Marcus explained after reviewing the letter. Rob spent 7 years in prison thinking about how to reverse his conviction, but he's fighting a war he already lost. The firm, we learned, was a barely legitimate operation run by a disbarred lawyer who specialized in frivolous lawsuits designed to harass rather than win. Rob had probably paid his last savings for this final gambit. But I wasn't taking any chances. We filed for a restraining order against Rob and prepared for one final legal battle. Rob appeared at the courthouse for the restraining order hearing, looking like a man who'd aged 20 years and 7. Prison had been hard on him. The confident real estate developer was gone, replaced by someone desperate and bitter. "Your Honor," his new lawyer began, "my client has served his time and simply wants to reconnect with his only family." "By harassing that family with frivolous lawsuits," Marcus countered. "Robert Harper forged documents, stole property, and gambled away family heritage. His conviction stands, and his brother deserves protection from further harassment." Rob stood up suddenly. "Bill, please. I made mistakes, but I'm still your brother." "No," I said, standing to face him. "My brother died the day he decided our family land was worth less than poker chips. You're just someone who happens to share my DNA." The judge granted the restraining order. Rob couldn't contact me, couldn't come within 500 yards of the farm, couldn't file any more legal actions without court approval. As we left the courthouse, Rob called out one last time, "You'll regret this, Bill. Family is all we have." "Family protects each other," I replied. "You proved you were never really family." That was the last time I saw my brother. Last month, we celebrated the 120th anniversary of Harper Family Farm. 4 generations of continuous operation, through the Great Depression, 2 world wars, economic crises, and family betrayal. The land endured because the people who loved it fought to protect it. Standing in the same fields where my great-grandfather first planted crops, where my father taught me the value of hard work, where Sarah and I built our life together, I understand what Rob never grasped. Some things are worth more than money because they cannot be replaced. The farm will outlive me, just as it outlived the previous generations. Mike and Jessica will add their own chapter to the Harper story, and their children will add theirs. The name may change, but the values will endure. Rob spent $650,000 on poker tables in 6 weeks. That money is gone forever, burned up in pursuit of quick thrills and easy money. The $8.4 million he owes will follow him for the rest of his life, a permanent reminder of what his betrayal cost him. But Harper Family Farm is worth more than money can measure. It's worth 4 generations of dreams, 120 years of dedication, and the promise that good land, in good hands, will feed the world forever. That's a legacy worth fighting for. That's a legacy Rob will never understand. And that's exactly why he lost. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Remember, true family is built on loyalty and respect, and the land always remembers who truly loves it. 2 years after the restraining order incident, I received news that would test everything I believed about justice and family. Rob had been hospitalized in Florida with a heart attack. The call came from a hospital social worker named Patricia Reynolds. "Mr. Harper, I'm calling because Robert Harper listed you as his emergency contact. He's stable now, but he has no other family, no insurance, and significant medical debt." My first instinct was to hang up. Rob had made his choices, burned his bridges, and showed no genuine remorse for his betrayal. But something in the social worker's voice gave me pause. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "He's been asking for you. Says he has something important to tell you before it's too late." Sarah's voice echoed in my memory from years past. "Bill, hatred hurts the person carrying it more than the person it's aimed at." But this wasn't about hatred anymore. It was about closure. I flew to Florida the next day, my first time off the farm in 3 years. The hospital was a stark, sterile place that smelled of disinfectant and desperation. Rob looked like a shell of his former self. Prison had aged him, but illness had broken him. "Bill," he whispered when he saw me, "you came." "I came to listen, that's all." For the next hour, Rob told me things I'd never known. About our father's disappointment when Rob chose real estate over farming. About feeling like the spare son who would never measure up. About the gambling addiction that started in college and consumed his life. "I convinced myself I deserved the farm," he said, tears streaming down his face. That you'd gotten everything and I'd gotten nothing, but the truth is I threw away everything I was given. Rob, this doesn't change what you did. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for something else. He reached under his pillow and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside were legal documents I didn't recognize. These are the mineral rights to the farm, Rob said. Daddy left them to me separately from the land. They've been sitting in a safety deposit box for 40 years. I never told you because I was planning to use them against you someday. I studied the documents. Oil and gas exploration rights to the entire 480-acre property, legally separate from land ownership. Potentially worth millions if the right deposits were found. There's more, Rob continued. A company called Midwest Energy has been trying to contact you for months. They want to lease the drilling rights. The broker estimates it could be worth $12 million over 10 years. Why are you telling me this now? Because I finally understand what Daddy was trying to teach us. The land provides for those who respect it. You respected it. I tried to exploit it. These rights belong with the land, not with someone who would sell them to the highest bidder. Rob's lawyer arrived that afternoon with transfer documents. The mineral rights would be signed over to me, with no compensation, no strings attached. Just Rob's final attempt to do something right. Bill, I can't undo the damage I caused, Rob said as I prepared to leave, but maybe I can help secure the farm's future for the next generation. I flew back to Iowa with mixed feelings. Rob's gesture didn't erase his betrayal, but it complicated my understanding of justice and family. Sometimes redemption comes in unexpected forms. The mineral rights discovery changed everything for Harper Family Farm, but not in ways I expected. Mike Morrison and I spent weeks discussing what to do with this unexpected windfall. Mr. Harper, we could lease the drilling rights and use the income to modernize every aspect of the operation, Mike suggested during one of our evening planning sessions. Solar panels, automated systems, maybe even expand to 1,000 acres. Or we could do nothing, I replied. Sometimes the best decision is to leave things alone. But the energy company was persistent. Midwest Energy sent representatives who painted pictures of responsible drilling, minimal environmental impact, and generational wealth. The money was tempting, especially knowing it could secure the farm's future regardless of crop prices or weather patterns. Bill, this could be your legacy, said David Chen, the energy company's lead negotiator. Financial security for your family for the next century. My legacy is the land itself, I responded, not what we extract from it. The debate continued for months. Mike researched drilling operations across Iowa, talking to farmers who had leased their mineral rights. The results were mixed. Some had become wealthy but lost their agricultural productivity. Others maintained their farming operations successfully alongside energy production. Mr. Harper, what would Sarah have wanted? Mike asked one evening as we watched the sunset over the cornfields. That question haunted me for days. Sarah had always been the practical one, the voice of reason when I got too stubborn or too sentimental. She would have wanted security for future generations, but not at the cost of the land's integrity. I made my decision during the 2024 harvest season, watching Mike and his crew bring in the best crop yield in the farm's history. This land was producing abundantly because it was loved and respected, not exploited. We're not leasing the mineral rights, I announced to the assembled team, but we're not ignoring them either. My plan was different from what anyone expected. Instead of leasing to private companies, we would partner with Iowa State University's agricultural research program. They would conduct non-invasive geological surveys to understand what lay beneath our soil, but any actual drilling would only occur if it could enhance, rather than damage, the land's agricultural productivity. It's about knowledge, not exploitation, I explained to Mike, understanding our land completely so we can protect it better. The university partnership brought unexpected benefits. Graduate students studied our soil composition, water table dynamics, and sustainable farming techniques. Harper Farm became a living laboratory where traditional farming wisdom met cutting-edge agricultural science. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the lead researcher, made a fascinating discovery 6 months into the project. Mr. Harper, your soil has unique mineral compositions that make it extraordinarily fertile. The same geological formations that create oil deposits also created some of the richest agricultural land in North America. So the mineral wealth and agricultural wealth are connected? Exactly. Drilling here wouldn't just risk the environment. It would risk destroying the very geological conditions that make this soil so productive. Rob's final gift had revealed not just mineral wealth, but the scientific basis for our farm's success. The knowledge was worth more than any drilling lease. Mike and Jessica announced their engagement that fall, with plans for a wedding on the farm the following spring. As I watched them plan their future, I realized that Rob's story had become part of the farm's history, not just its tragedy. "Tell me about Uncle Rob again," Jessica asked one evening as we reviewed wedding plans. "Rob forgot that wealth comes in many forms," I said. "He thought money was the only currency that mattered. But there's also the wealth of community, of tradition, of land that feeds you in return for your care." "Do you think he understood that at the end?" "I think he tried to. Sometimes that's enough." The mineral rights now sit in a trust, managed jointly by Mike and me, with strict provisions that any future use must enhance rather than exploit the land. It's not the fortune Rob imagined, but it's something more valuable: security with integrity. Rob died peacefully in Florida 6 months later. He left no estate, no debts beyond his medical bills, and no family except the brother he had betrayed. I paid for his funeral, not out of forgiveness but out of finality. The gravestone reads simply, "Robert Harper, 1965 to 2025, brother." No mention of his crimes, no judgment of his choices, just acknowledgement of the relationship that defined both our lives. Mike asked if I regretted paying for Rob's funeral. "Family responsibility doesn't end with betrayal," I explained. "It ends with death. I'm not honoring the man he became, but the boy who grew up beside me on this land." Today, Harper Family Farm stands as testament to the truth that some things endure, not because they're protected from change, but because they adapt while maintaining their essential character. Mike and Jessica's wedding last spring brought together farmers from across Iowa, university researchers, and even some of Rob's old friends who wanted to pay their respects to family complexity. The ceremony took place in the same field where my great-grandfather first planted crops in 1903. 4 generations of Harper dreams had been realized on that soil, and now a 5th generation was beginning. Mike and Jessica's vows included a promise to honor the land that sustains us and the wisdom of those who came before. Rob's story has become part of our family legend, told not to glorify revenge, but to illustrate the cost of betrayal and the possibility of redemption. The mineral rights he returned now fund agricultural scholarships for Iowa farm kids who might otherwise leave rural communities for city opportunities. Uncle Rob's scholarship, as Mike's daughters call it, has sent 12 young people to agricultural college over the past 3 years. They return to rural Iowa with modern knowledge and traditional values, strengthening farming communities across the state. The $8.4 million judgment against Rob was officially forgiven upon his death, not because justice didn't matter, but because justice had been served. He lost everything that mattered to him: money, reputation, family, and spent his final years understanding the magnitude of his choices. But the most important victory was never about Rob's punishment. It was about preserving something irreplaceable for future generations. Harper Family Farm now produces not just crops, but knowledge, community, and hope for sustainable agriculture. Last month, Emma Morrison, Mike's 6-year-old daughter, asked me the question that every generation must answer: "Grandpa Bill, will this always be our farm?" "As long as there are people who love it more than they love money," I told her. "As long as there are people who understand that we don't own the land, we belong to it." Standing in those same fields where Rob and I played as children, where we learned about work and responsibility, where he eventually chose greed over legacy, I understand that his story was necessary. Not because betrayal is good, but because overcoming betrayal reveals what really matters. The land remains. The values endure. The next generation prepares to add their chapter to a story that began long before any of us and will continue long after we're gone. Rob spent his life trying to take shortcuts to wealth and happiness. The irony is that everything he wanted was available to him through the same path I took: patience, respect for the land, and understanding that true wealth is measured in generations, not bank accounts. Harper Family Farm will celebrate its 125th anniversary in 5 years. Mike and Jessica's children will help plant the commemorative oak tree, just as Rob and I helped plant the centennial oak in 2003. The difference is that these children will grow up understanding what Rob never learned: that the greatest inheritance is not what you receive, but what you preserve for others. That's the real harvest. Not just the crops we grow each season, but the wisdom we cultivate and pass down. Rob's betrayal tested that wisdom, but couldn't destroy it. In the end, the land taught us all the same lesson: take only what you need, give back more than you take, and remember that you are temporary, but your choices are permanent. The sun sets over Harper Family Farm the same way it set for my great-grandfather, the same way it will set for Emma Morrison's children. Constant change, eternal values, and the unshakable truth that good land, in good hands, will always provide for those who respect it. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Remember, true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the legacy you leave for future generations. As I finish telling you William Harper's story, I want you to understand something important. This isn't just about one family's struggle with betrayal and justice. This is about a pattern we see again and again in families across America and around the world. Every week, I receive hundreds of messages from viewers sharing their own stories of family betrayal. Adult children who steal from elderly parents, siblings who manipulate inheritance documents, family members who exploit illness, grief, or vulnerability for financial gain. The Harper story represents thousands of similar cases that never make headlines, never reach courtrooms, and never find justice. What makes William's story different isn't the severity of Rob's betrayal. It's William's refusal to accept that betrayal as inevitable. Too many victims of family financial abuse stay silent because they believe that, quote, family problems should stay in the family. They're embarrassed, they're afraid of public judgment, and they desperately hope that love will eventually overcome greed. William Harper teaches us that sometimes love requires boundaries. Sometimes protecting family values means removing family members who violate those values. The most important lesson in his story isn't about revenge. It's about understanding when tolerance becomes enablement. Think about Rob's progression from entitled younger brother to criminal fraud perpetrator. It didn't happen overnight. It happened through years of small compromises, minor accommodations, and gradual boundary erosions. Every time William excused Rob's selfishness, every time the family overlooked his gambling, every time they tolerated his disrespect for farming values, they enabled the person who would eventually steal their heritage. This pattern exists in families everywhere. The adult child who borrows money repeatedly without repaying, the relative who expects financial support without reciprocal loyalty, the family member who treats generosity as obligation and kindness as weakness. These behaviors escalate when they're not confronted. The Harper case also demonstrates something crucial about justice in family conflicts. Many people assume that legal action against family members is inherently wrong, that it represents a failure of love or forgiveness. But William's lawsuit wasn't about punishment, it was about protection. He wasn't just recovering his own assets, he was establishing legal precedent that would protect other elderly farmers from similar fraud. The Harper Protection Act, passed by Iowa after this case, has prevented dozens of similar crimes. William's willingness to pursue justice created systemic change that benefits people he'll never meet. That's the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge satisfies personal anger, but justice protects the innocent. Consider also the role of community in this story. Cedar Falls rallied around William not because they hated Rob, but because they understood that an attack on one farming family was an attack on their entire way of life. Rural communities survive through mutual support and shared values. When someone violates those values, the community responds collectively. This community response highlights something urban populations often miss about rural family conflicts. In cities, family betrayal might be private drama. In farming communities, it threatens everyone's security. When land inheritance is disrupted by fraud, it destabilizes local economies, agricultural practices, and generational knowledge transfer. The mineral rights subplot in William's story represents another crucial lesson about delayed gratification versus immediate profit. Rob would have sold those rights to the highest bidder, extracted maximum short-term value, and moved on to the next opportunity. William understood that some assets are more valuable when preserved than when exploited. This distinction reflects a fundamental difference in worldview. Rob saw everything as a transaction. William saw everything as a relationship. Land wasn't property to be sold. It was heritage to be stewarded. Family wasn't a network to be exploited. It was a commitment to be honored. The scholarship fund created from Rob's returned mineral rights demonstrates how justice can become generative, rather than simply punitive. Instead of using those assets for personal enrichment, William transformed them into opportunities for young people who shared his values. The betrayal that nearly destroyed the Harper legacy ultimately strengthened it by creating pathways for others to continue rural traditions. This generative approach to justice appears throughout William's story. The university research partnership didn't just protect the farm, it advanced agricultural science. The mentorship of Mike Morrison didn't just ensure succession, it modeled healthy family business relationships. The legal precedent didn't just recover stolen assets. It protected future victims. That's what distinguishes true wisdom from mere intelligence. Rob was intelligent enough to forge documents convincingly, manipulate legal systems, and exploit family dynamics. But wisdom would have taught him that sustainable success requires building rather than taking, creating rather than consuming, nurturing rather than exploiting. The most heartbreaking aspect of Rob's story is how unnecessary his choices were. If he had embraced farming values instead of rejecting them, if he had developed patience instead of demanding immediate gratification, if he had learned to build wealth rather than steal it, he could have shared in the Harper legacy rather than destroying his place in it. William's forgiveness of Rob's debt after his death demonstrates the difference between justice and vengeance. Justice had been served through legal consequences, community recognition, and protective legislation. Continuing to pursue debt collection from a dead man would have been vengeance, not justice. William understood that true victory meant protecting the future, not punishing the past. As you reflect on this story, ask yourself, what values are you willing to defend? What boundaries are you willing to enforce? What legacy are you building for future generations? And perhaps most importantly, are you enabling destructive behavior in your own family by avoiding difficult conversations about respect, responsibility, and reciprocity? The Harper family farm endures because William Harper learned to distinguish between family loyalty and family exploitation. That distinction might be the most valuable lesson any of us can learn from his story. Thank you for listening to Justice Chronicles. Remember, the strongest families aren't those that avoid conflict, but those that handle conflict with integrity, wisdom, and respect for values that transcend individual desires. Until next time, protect what matters, defend what's right, and never forget that justice delayed is not always justice denied. Sometimes it's justice perfected.